You know that your civilization is the best. Throughout the years, you have progressed and grown. Technologies, culture, fame, and innovation have become synonymous with you and your people. These other nations don't stand a chance. This is Imperium Horizons, which was designed by Nigel Buckle and David Turtzi and was published by Offspree Games, who helped sponsor this video. Hi everybody, my name is Nick Murphy of the Brothers Murph, and we are here with Board Game Geek. Well, I think it's about time that I show my supremacy, so let's get this game down to the table to learn how to play Imperium Horizons. In Imperium Horizons, each player will take on a nation and you'll be working to gain progress, fame, and of course, victory points. Now, this will be a rules teach of the game, but there are 14 unique factions in this box and they all play quite differently. Pretty much all of the rules I'm about to teach may be different or modified depending on which nation you're playing. Now, I'm not going to teach all of the different nations, so be sure to read your nation's description and differences in the rulebook. And note that Imperium Horizons can be mixed and played with Imperium Classics and Legends. Okay, let's get into the setup.
The first thing you'll do is choose a nation. Each nation has their own unique deck of cards and you will take all of these. Note that if you are not playing with the trade routes expansion that is in this box, you may not choose a nation that has this path symbol. Take a player organizer and slot them together. Place your power card shown with this symbol here under your board. Choose either the B side or the A side to play with. B stands for basic and A stands for advanced. Some nations like the Polynesians have more cards with this symbol. Place these below your power card. Place your state card with the red barbarian side up here. Note that some nations will have their own state card. Take 3 action tokens and 5 exhaust tokens and place them on your state card. Place all of your development cards with this symbol face up here above your board. Place the accession card with the circle symbol face up here. Shuffle all cards with the moon symbol and place them face down on top of your accession cards sideways. If your nation has them, place cards with the arrow symbol to the side for now. Take a King of Kings token, 3 material tokens, 2 population tokens, and 1 progress token and place them here. Shuffle all of your remaining cards that have no symbol in the bottom left to create your draw deck. Draw 5 cards into your hand and now you have finished your personal setup. Let's set up the main area. Place the remaining tokens in a place where all players can reach them. Place the market board in the middle of the table. Make sure the side without the trade routes symbol is face up. Take all of the common cards, which are cards without a nation color. Sort these cards by their banner colors. Make sure to remove any cards with 3+ or 4 players on them if you are only playing a 2-player game, and remove the 4-player cards if playing with 3 players. Also, make sure to remove any cards with this path symbol if you're not using the trade routes expansion. Place all of the Unrest cards at the right side of the board here. Make sure to add in any nation's Unrest cards with the arrow at the bottom that we set aside during player setup. Place the King of Kings card with side A up above the board here. Randomly take either 6, 7, or 8 fame cards for 2, 3, or 4 players. Shuffle them and place them face down sideways on top of the King of Kings card. Return the rest of the fame cards to the box. Now we will create the regions, uncivilized, and civilized decks in the same way. Randomly take 6, 7, or 8 cards of each deck, shuffle them, and place them face down above their space on the market board. Take the remainder of these cards and the tributary cards and shuffle them all together to form the main deck. Place this sideways above the market board here. Draw 1 card from the region, uncivilized, and civilized deck and 2 cards from the main deck and place them below the market board. Every card that is not a region card gains an Unrest card beneath it. Place 1 progress token on every card with a white banner. Lastly, choose a first player and place the solstice token in between the first player and the last player. And now we're ready to begin. We are going to break down the rules teach like this. I am going to teach the basic rules of the game and the way a round flows, and then we'll talk about a number of the keywords and some examples of how cards work. Because this is a card game, the general rules are relatively simple, but there's a ton of variety in the keywords and how the various nations play. Each player will take their turn, and then after the last player goes, there will be a solstice round, and then a new round will begin. On your turn, you may take an activate round, an innovate round, or a revolt round. The vast majority of the time, you'll be taking an activate round. When you take an activate round, you will be activating your cards in your hand and in your play area, mostly using your action tokens and your exhaust tokens. Your action tokens will mostly be used to play your cards, though some cards may require you to spend action tokens as well. To play a card from your hand, you will have to use an action token. To show that you've used it, move the token off of your state card. If you have no more action tokens, you may not take any more actions. When you play a card, you will resolve all of the effects and the text on the card from top to bottom. Afterwards, you will place the card in your discard pile. That is, unless it has this infinity symbol up top. These will go into your play area, and many will have an effect triggered later as well as the when played effect. Note that if the card you want to play has either the Barbarian or Empire symbol, you may only play that card if your state card matches that symbol. Many cards you play will require you to pay something. This could be materials, population, cards, or more. Note that you may pay 1 progress as 1 population or as 2 materials. Paying is mandatory, and if you cannot pay the full cost, you may not play that card. If a card says may on it, then this is optional, but if it does not say this, it is mandatory. Now, you use your action tokens to play cards, but you use your exhaust tokens to activate cards in your play area that say the word exhaust on them. Unless stated otherwise, you may only use exhaust abilities on your turn. And note that you may exhaust a card in your play area even if it does not match your state card. To use an exhaust ability, you will move an exhaust token from your state card to the card that you're using, and then you will resolve the ability. Each exhaust ability may only be used once per round, unless the exhaust token is moved off of the card due to some other ability. If you do not want to take an activate turn, you may take an innovate turn or a revolt turn. During an innovate turn, you will place all of the cards in your hand into your discard pile, and then you will break through for a card. Breakthrough is a keyword you will see a lot, and we'll go into it in more detail when we go through the keywords. When you take an innovate turn, you may break through for a region card, an uncivilized card, a civilized card, or a tributary. Instead of activate or innovate, you may take a revolt turn. In this kind of turn, you will simply return all of the unrest cards from your hand to the unrest pile here. So those are the 3 kinds of turns you may take, and at the end of the turn, you will clean up. You will choose 1 card in the market and you will add 1 progress token to it. You will then take back all of your 3 action tokens and your exhaust tokens and place them back onto your state card. Now you may discard as many cards from your hand as you want. You will then draw back up to your hand limit, which is 5 unless something increases it. Now this is a deck building game, so if you run out of cards in your deck and you need to draw a card, you will need to shuffle your discard pile. When you shuffle your deck, you will generally add your other, more powerful cards into your deck. Note, to do this, you must have an exhaust token left over. If you do not, you may not add a new card to your deck. When you need to shuffle, you will check to see if you have a card to add. If there are any cards in the nation deck on top of your accession card, you will add the top 1 to your discard pile. If only the accession card is left, you will instead add this card to the top of your discard pile. If you added your accession card to your discard pile, you will flip your state card to its empire side. If there are no cards in your nation deck here, you may instead pay to develop one of your development cards. The cost to develop the card is shown here in white. Note that you may develop any card in your development deck, not just the top card. There is no set order. Once you have gained a new card, you will place an exhaust token on the deck you gained the card from to signify that you gained a card. If you need to reshuffle and there's already an exhaust token on your nation or development deck, you will complete the reshuffle without adding a card. After you've added the card, you will then shuffle your discard pile and then draw any cards that you need to. This generally happens at the end of your turn, as you can discard as many cards as you want, but it can happen mid-turn as well if you have the ability to draw cards. Note that if a card says draw cards if able, this will not trigger a reshuffle. You will simply draw all the cards you can and then stop. Once you have finished your cleanup, play will move to the next player. Once the final player in turn order finishes their turn, a solstice round will happen before the start player takes their next turn. Many cards will go down into your play area and will have an effect that happens during solstice. All players may activate their solstice cards at the same time, and each player may activate all of their solstice abilities in whatever order they'd like. Once all players have finished, the start player will begin their next turn. Play will continue until the end of the game is triggered, and this can happen in a few ways. This game can end in a number of ways, and it will either end in a scoring ending or in a collapse. A scoring end will trigger if there are no more cards in the main deck, if a player develops their last card in their development deck, if the King of Kings card is flipped face down, or if a player activates a trigger endgame effect. When the endgame is triggered, you will finish that round with a solstice round per usual, and then you'll play one final round with a solstice round per usual. You will then score all the cards you have. Score cards in your hand, discard pile, play area, draw deck, your power card, and in your history under your power card. Note that you do not score cards from your nation or development deck that you did not gain. Cards may be worth a specific amount of points, may be worth points if a condition is met, or may be worth a variable amount of points depending on the scoring condition on the card. Note that some cards may also be worth negative points. Each progress token you have is also worth 1 point at the end of the game. Players count up their points and the player with the most points wins. Now that is a scoring ending. If too much unrest happens, then a collapse endgame endgame happens. If there are no more cards in the Unrest pile at any time, the game ends immediately in a collapse. And note that a collapse can happen after the scoring has been triggered, and if it does, the game still ends immediately in a collapse. When a collapse happens, all players count up all of the Unrest cards they have in their hand, deck, and play area, and the player with the least Unrest wins. If there is a tie, the tied players count up their points in the normal way, and the player with the most points wins. Okay, so that is the general rules in Imperium Horizons. Now let's talk about the different types of cards. All of the cards do a myriad of different things, and some of them will be played as actions or down into your play area. Note that if a card is down in your play area and has the passive keyword, its ability is always active. The uncivilized and civilized cards are similar, but the uncivilized cards are generally going to be for when you're in a barbarian state, and the civilized cards are generally for when you're in an empire state. Tributary cards are other civilizations that have pledged themselves to you. Fame cards are powerful cards that tend to be worth a lot of points. Note that when only the King of Kings card is left, you may activate this card instead of taking it like you would a normal Fame card. When it is activated, you will trigger the end of the game and then flip the card over. Now players may activate this side. Note that each player may only activate either side of the King of Kings cards once in a game. Flip your King of Kings token to signify that you've activated it. The Unrest cards gunk up your hand and are worth negative points. The last kind of card is regions. Regions always go down into your play area. Some cards have these swords on them. These are attack cards and will negatively affect your opponents. Many cards will have symbols under their banners here. These don't do anything on their own, but many other cards will reference them and they will make those cards more powerful. Now let's talk about some common keywords. One of the ways to get new cards is with the Acquire keyword. When you do this, you will acquire the kind of card that the action indicates. You will then choose one of the cards underneath the market board. If the card has any tokens on it, you will gain them as well, and if there's an Unrest card under the card, you will also gain this. When you gain the card, it will go directly into your hand and can be used immediately. A new card will then be drawn and placed below the market board in the vacant space. You will draw from the deck above the space you gained the card from. If the deck there is empty, you will draw the top card of the main deck and place it in the empty spot. Any new card other than region cards will gain an Unrest underneath them. We mentioned the breakthrough keyword earlier when talking about the innovate turn. When you break through, you will gain the card of the indicated type, but you don't have to take an Unrest card. When you break through, you may take a card from the face-up cards in the market, or you may gain the top card of its respective deck. If that type of card's deck is empty, or you're breaking through for a tributary card which don't have their own deck, you may draw cards off the top of the main deck until you find one. You will then gain that card and then shuffle the main deck. Regions will very often allow you to garrison a card under it. When you activate the garrison keyword, you will take a card from your hand and place it under the card. This may be to trigger other effects, or it may be to thin out your hand as you want to be shuffling as much as possible to get those better cards. Sometimes you may be able to recall or abandon a card in your play area. When you recall the card, you will take that card and any cards garrisoned underneath and return them to your hand. If it is abandoned, these cards will go to your discard pile. Certain cards may allow you to exile a card. When you do this, you will place the card in the exile pile here. Note that you may not exile a card that has any tokens on it. These cards are now out of the game, but note that there are some cards that allow you to gain cards from the exile pile. Some effects allow you to swap cards, and sometimes that swap can happen with your nation deck, the market, and sometimes even the exile pile. You will swap the card with the market and elsewhere dictated by the card. When you swap a card from the market this way, any tokens on it stay in that position and the Unrest underneath it is discarded. When you place the swapped card in the market, place an Unrest underneath it per usual unless it's a region, and place any tokens in that space on the new card. If a card allows you to free play a card, you may play a card without using an action, but you must still pay any costs on the card's ability. Many nations will have you play cards into your history. When you do this, you will place the card underneath your power card. This is your nation's history, and note that these cards will still score at the end of the game. When an ability tells you to find a card, you will look through the indicated deck or place and gain the indicated card. When an ability allows you to look, you will look through the indicated deck and then return the cards back in any order. Note that if you're looking through the Fame deck or your nation's deck, this does not include the King of Kings card or your Accession card. To return an Unrest card, you will pay an action and then pay one of the costs stated on the card and then return it to the Unrest deck. Okay, so that is most of the keywords and how the cards generally work. How all of these cards work together and synergize is the main crux of the game. And as stated earlier, the various nations will change, adapt, and modify these rules. In this game, there is also the Trade Routes expansion. Let's quickly go through it. You will set up the game in the normal way with these changes. Each player will gain an extra exhaust token and they will gain one goods token instead of a progress token. Each player will be given a merchant card which will go below your state card with the merchant's side face up. Note that any nation from any Imperium set can be played with the Trade Routes expansion, but these 6 nations from Horizon Horizons can only be played if playing with this expansion. Now let's set up the commons area. Make sure you are playing with the trade routes side of the market board. Remove all cards from the commons decks with the sword symbol in the bottom left, as they are not used when playing with the trade routes. You will set up the commons decks as you would in a normal game, but first you will shuffle the trade routes deck and place one trade routes card face up on the bottom of each small deck, and then place the shuffled small deck on top. Take out one trade route card if playing with 3 players and 2 if you're playing with 2 players, and then shuffle the remaining trade route cards into the main deck. In this expansion, you will play with one more fame card in its deck, so on top of the normal way you construct the fame deck, make sure to shuffle in the welcome fame card to this deck. Okay, so that's the setup, but let's talk about the gameplay. The majority of the game will work in the same way, but now we have some trade routes cards that will get brought into the market, and some nations even have their own trade routes cards in their deck. Trade routes cards will get played down into your play area and will deal with goods tokens. Your merchant card is generally what allows you to gain trade route cards and gives you your main access to the trade keyword. This may also be flipped to its merchant empire side by spending 3 goods, which gives it a significant upgrade. You will play trade routes cards down into your play area, and when you do, you will activate its commerce ability for free. When you activate the trade keyword, you may do one of 3 things. You may pay 1 progress to gain 1 goods token. You may place a goods token from your resource pool on a trade routes card in your play area that has less than 3 goods on it, and then you may activate the card's commerce ability. Or you may place a goods token from the supply onto an opponent's trade route card and activate its commerce ability. When you do this last option, you will also gain 1 goods token from the supply. Once a trade route has enough goods, you can profit. When a trade card has 3 goods, it is full, and the owner may spend 1 action token to remove the goods into their resource pool and activate the card's profit ability. The trade routes card will then be placed in your discard pile and will circle back through. So that is the basics of the trade routes expansion. Let's quickly go over some additional rules that may come up. Trade route cards go into your play area and have this signpost symbol. Keywords like abandon and recall do not include trade route cards. They specifically refer to cards with the infinity symbol, not the signpost symbol. When a commons deck is depleted and therefore reveals a trade routes card, that card only moves down into the market once you would need to draw again from that deck. Note that if a trade route card is in the market, it will gain an unrest card like all non-region cards. Face-up trade route cards above the market are explicitly not in the market and therefore cannot be targeted by abilities such as Aquire. If an ability allows you to break through for a trade routes card and there are 1 or more above the market board, you will take one of these. If there are none, you will then search the main deck to find one. When paying for things, you may spend 1 goods token in lieu of 1 population token or 2 material tokens. Though note that goods tokens and progress tokens cannot be spent in lieu of each other. And with that, we finish with the trade routes expansion, and that is how you play Imperium Horizons.
Imperium Horizons is all about learning your nation and adapting to how they play and how all of your cards synergize together. On top of the 14 different nations, you also have all of the common cards that will synergize and change up the way you play. And throughout the game, you want to be shuffling through your deck as much as you can to get those juicy nation and development cards. And if Imperium Horizons seems like a game you'd enjoy, make sure to check it out to learn more. And until next time, I've been Nick Murphy, and that is how to play Imperium Horizons. Have a great day.